Okay, I think we are now live. See, we have 36 participants. Welcome everybody to St. Joe's first installment of this year's SOFA Socials. We use these webinars to hopefully connect with you parents and families out there who are going through this application process and looking at different schools right now to help give you some information, answer any questions you may have, and kind of connect with you on some different topics. As we said, the first installment tonight is about the admissions process, financial aid, and scholarships at St. Joseph Regional High School. My name is Ryan Hspt. I'm the Director of Admissions and Marketing at St. Joe's. I'm sure I've met many of you over the last couple months at either open house or our night for a day or possibly one of our ambassador tours. And it's great to have all of you back with us. And hopefully we can field some of your questions. The way to send us your questions tonight is in the Q&A section. If you just type in your question, all the panelists here will see that and we'll kind of direct those questions to the appropriate person to get them answered for you. Before we get started, I just want to introduce our group of panelists that we have tonight. With us tonight is Hillary Barnett, our admissions coordinator. Many of you have emailed with Hillary and talked with her about school admin and the application online. And I know she's been a great help to you guys, and she's a great asset to have tonight for some questions that you may have. Mary Kay Buckley is here with us tonight. Mary Kay is in our business office. She'll be able to field many of the financial aid questions that are coming our way. Principal Mike Bruno is with us as well tonight. He's able to talk about all of our overarching subjects that we're going to talk about tonight, especially financial aid and scholarships and some of the qualifications for those. And Andy Odie is also with us tonight. He's the head of our business department, and he can also help with some of the questions relating to financial aid and scholarships at St. Joe's. So if you do have questions, you can put them right in that Q&A box. Just type them in and send them to us. And we'll get started answering those questions as they come along here. I guess to get started, just from an admission standpoint, to remind everyone of some of the dates that are upcoming. One key date has just passed, obviously. Hopefully your sons took the Hspt exam last Friday, November 5th. That is a requirement for the parochial schools. So any student applying to the parochials in this area does have to take that test. If your son has not taken that test, the makeup date is this Saturday, November 13th. If you live in Bergen County, Paramus Catholic is the testing site for the makeup. So you can go to the New Jersey Co-op website through the Archdiocese. You can print out the registration form and bring that with you as a walk-in to the makeup exam on November 13th. Our application deadline is fast approaching. We're almost 1 month away. That is December 10th. That goes for financial aid as well, and many of our scholarships that we're going to talk about tonight. So December 10th is a date to keep an eye on as far as getting in some of the required documentation that we need for your son's application to St. Joe's. So Hillary, I just want to set you up to talk with the crew real quick and introduce a little bit of the process of what's going on online right now for school admin and how this works with the application page, the essay, and when families do complete that application form with the essay, what then that unlocks for families, right?
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan. Hello, everybody. Once you fill out your application online, which can be found on our website, once you fill that out and your son writes the essay and everything is submitted, then you'll get an email back. You'll actually get two emails back. One is an auto-generated email that we have indeed received your application. And the second is an email from me stating the next steps. So it will then populate. Once you get this email, you'll know that your checklist is now populated in the parent portal. This will give you access to requesting letters of recommendation, updating your or asking for requesting for your transcripts from your school, and a host of other things that you're going to need along the way. This checklist is not available until your application is submitted in full. Once that happens, again, you'll receive the email, and then you'll electronically be able to request transcripts from your school, and that's all done through the portal. All you'll do is you'll click into that item. You're going to enter the name and email address of the person you'd like to send your request to. An email goes out to them, and then they're able to electronically upload the records that we need once that request is received. The same thing happens for letters of recommendation. It is an electronic request. You click in the box. It will ask you to whom you want your request sent. You'll put in the name of the person, the email, click another button, and off the request goes. There's an opportunity for 2 letters of recommendation in 2 different check boxes on your checklist. You'll see that one is an item that must be completed, and then the other is not, is a secondary one, as we really require 1 letter of recommendation from your school, and the second one you can get if you'd like to. Same thing with your official transcripts. We know that there might be 2 schools that your son was at, a middle school and a grammar school. So there is 1 checklist item for official transcripts, and then there's another checklist item in case you need to request those records from 2 separate schools.
Okay, so we're going to get to some questions. Thanks, Hillary. We have some questions coming in. Just a reminder, the requirements for application are the writing sample, which is part of the application form, which Hillary mentioned is the first step. So unfortunately, you're at the mercy of your sons and having them complete that essay. That essay should be in the range of 250 to 500 words. You have 2 topics that they can choose from. And once that is submitted along with the application form and unlocks your checklist, from there, we need your transcripts to be sent to us from your school and 1 letter of recommendation from your school. You can add an additional letter of recommendation from a coach or someone from church or a club, but we do require at least 1 of those letters be from someone at school. The other requirement, as we talked about, was the Hspt test. Those scores, we're expected to have them just after Thanksgiving, so well before the deadline. So we will have those scores to put into your son's profile prior to December 10th. That application deadline. So let's get to some of the questions so we can get moving on this. So Victoria wants to know, how much is the Hspt test weighed versus grades in relation to the application process? I'll speak on this, and I know Mr. Bruno can also speak on this. The test is important when it comes to the application process, but we do like to look at the full scope of our applicants. So we do look at their grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We do see if there was any movement, any trends, anything that might catch our attention in those grades. We read that letter of recommendation or letters of recommendation. We look at those test scores. Last year, we saw some test scores that didn't quite match up with the grades that we were seeing from kids. So COVID certainly had its effect last year. We expect that to be the case again this year. So we like to look at the full scope. As well as those 3 aspects, we've met many of your sons. Many of them have come through the building, have gone night for a day. We've spoken with some of them, gotten to meet some of their families as well. And that's a big factor, getting to know the young man who we are possibly going to accept into our community at St. Joe's. So it really is a full scope. I can't say, Victoria, one is weighed over the other, but Mike, what are your thoughts on that as far as the comparison between how much we take the grades into account against the test scores?
I think it was well said. It's definitely a combination, and COVID is one thing that has sort of thrown us for a loop. And I'm sure you as parents, and certainly your sons as students, where, grades are all over the place, quite honestly. So the test in that way becomes important because it's kind of the one uniformed barometer that we have to look at all of our applicants. So as much as I would never say to your sons, there's a lot riding on this test, from a scholarship standpoint, there's a lot riding on the test. So it is an important factor, but as Ryan pointed out, the total picture is important to us. So we're meticulous going through grades and reading those essays. And as Mr. Hspt said, as many of you as can participate in all the other components of the admissions process, visiting campus kind of being the most important one, all of that plays a factor, but the test is an important piece.
Okay, another question. Do we get confirmation emails once transcripts and letters of rec have been submitted? Hillary can hop in on this. I don't believe you get an actual confirmation email from that. What you do have is a status bar in your profile. Is that, Hillary? And once those are uploaded from a guidance counselor, that bar is going to grow as far as the percentage of what's complete, correct?
You are correct. You can check how far along you are by going back into your portal. You'll see those items checked off when we receive that information, and you will also see the bar grow. You do not receive an email when something is uploaded to your portal.
So as you go through the admissions process piece by piece, that bar will continue to grow as you get closer to 100%. And that also alerts us that when we see an applicant who is nearing 100%, they're getting ready to be reviewed at that point. And we start our review process in December. Okay. Our next question is from David. My school mails in transcripts on behalf of students. Do they also need to upload the transcripts via the portal? They do not need to do both. What we've tried to do, and it's a gradual process, is to move our complete application process to be a digital process. Many schools are used to sending in the printed transcripts, and we expect that to be the case again this year. But we've encouraged schools to send them in digitally, to be able to scan them and upload them to your profile. They also have the ability, many schools, some guidance counselors will scan all their transcripts for their students that are applying, and they'll email them to us in bulk, and then we can put them in there in the portal as well. But Hillary, I know we get loads of paper copies of the transcripts. We're trying to avoid that, but we know that's not going to be 100% success rate this year, as it's kind of a new process. But they can do both. Is that right, Hillary?
Absolutely. And I want to touch upon something else you said, Ryan, something else we discussed. You can go back into your portal, and if you don't see those things checked off, you are able to send a second request to the same person. You can email them again. So if you check back in your portal and you don't see those letters of recommendation uploaded, you can just click resend the request. And so you can stay on top of what's happening in your own portal.
All right, our next question. So when are the transcripts and recommendation letters due if the application and essay are due December 10th? So let's clarify that. The entire application as a whole, which is your application form, essay, transcripts, and letters of recommendation, are due December 10th. The only exception to that is if your school is on a trimester schedule, and they will not have their first trimester grades ready. We've gotten alerted that certain towns, I know, I believe Ringwood and Creskill have been alerted that they don't end till December 10th, and that's okay. We'll get those transcripts. That's not going to be held against anyone. We understand some schools are not going to finish till the second or third week of December. They'll then send us the transcripts. We'll just hold off on reading those applications for a few weeks. But the entire application as a whole is due on December 10th. Now, you can submit, and you need to submit that application form and essay first and as soon as possible, because that will unlock your checklist and allow you to start uploading the other elements of your application. So hopefully that helped with that question there. Another question. So the only letter required is from any educator at my son's school. Should we request more, or does it not have any influence on the decision of acceptance? Right, we require one letter of recommendation from your son's school. That can be from a teacher, a guidance counselor, a principal, someone that's worked with them on a project at their school. The second letter of recommendation is not required. Does it help? Sure, it helps, especially if it's a letter that sheds a light on an aspect of your son that we did not know about. You may have a son who's an athlete, and you may have a coach who he's very close with, and you're free to ask that coach to write a secondary letter of recommendation, which will really give us a more wide range of picture of the type of son that is applying to St. Joe's. If you have a teacher or principal is telling us about the type of student he is, and then a coach telling us the type of leadership qualities a young man has, or how he treated an opponent, showing sportsmanship or something like that, that does go a long way. And I know Mike and I read many of these essays, and Mike, I think you could probably answer that as well. The fact of hearing about different personality traits from an applicant is important when making a decision, right?
That's exactly right. And to Ryan's point, the one letter is the required piece. I've dealt with families who, they want to give us 6, 7, 8 letters, and it's wonderful to hear all of the great things about your son. But really, one is sufficient. Very infrequently do we see a letter of recommendation that's not highly recommending your son for admission. So the one letter is important. I think Ryan's point is good, though, in that if you do have somebody else who you think just paint your son in a different light, he's been involved in service at your parish, or he's something else unique. It is important for us to know those things, but again, just the one letter from an academic standpoint is sufficient.
Okay, Tim wants to know, do you look at every marking period or just final grades? Tim, I can say we start with the final grades from each year. And then if we see some grades that may need us to explore a little bit more, we start to look back at the track record. Was there one, did the student have just one poor semester? Is the timing of that semester synced up with something that was going on? So we saw that a lot last year with when students went remote. The second semester of students, 7th grade, it would have been for those applicants. We saw some variation in the grades, but Mike, I don't know if I answered that succinctly enough, but I tend to look at those final grades, see if there are any red flags of getting my attention, and then look further into each particular semester if we need to.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, the review process is, it's tedious. I mean, that's kind of the only way to put it, where we are really going through with a fine tooth comb every aspect. But I think you hit it perfectly. We really start with the final grades. So it just gives you kind of the initial picture of what level student are we dealing with here. Are we dealing with an A level student, generally a B level student or below? And then, yes, we can sort of dive in a little bit deeper and look at individual marking periods. COVID, again, has sort of complicated that in that we're going to receive grades from certain schools that second semester of 2020 is blank, or they're just exempt grades. And so that it feels a little invalid. So we really do need the full picture of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade scores in order to get a more clear picture as to what kind of student your son is.
Okay, Ricky wants to know, how do I apply for my son to attend Freshman for a Day? So Ricky, I think you're probably referring to our Night for a Day program, which is our shadow program where 8th graders come in and spend the day with a student at St. Joe's. And that is ongoing. We've had a great turnout this fall. We have another big group coming in tomorrow to St. Joe's. You can register for that online. If you go into the admissions tab and visit SJR, you'll be able to register for a Night for a Day on some of the dates that are available still over the next couple of weeks. And we pair your son up with a ambassador who is possibly of similar interest, extracurricular interest, academic level. So they have some commonalities that they can share throughout the day. They go to 5 periods, and the day usually runs from 8 a.m. to 12:30 when mom and dad pick up our nights for the day. So we have a financial aid question. When are we informed if you received financial aid? So Mrs. Buckley, I don't know if you want to touch on this. We haven't really hit on financial aid yet, but that is available for all families to apply for. So I guess we can start with that process if you want to explain, and then we can talk about when families are notified whether they qualified for aid or not.
Sure. So thank you again for joining us tonight. I'll just give you a brief background on myself. I spent 3 years in the business office so far, and I've also been a parent at St. Joe's for 4 years. My son Patrick attended St. Joe's and graduated a couple of years ago. I also had a daughter who attended Catholic high school and graduated from IHA. So the reason I bring this up is because we fully realize, and I fully appreciate the choices and the sacrifices that you will make as parents choosing Catholic education. St. Joe's is the kind of place that, based on our size, we can pay attention to each case of financial aid and scholarship application, trying to make the goal, making our choice of Catholic education as accessible and as much of an option as possible for as many families as we can. My children went to public school before they came to Catholic high school, so I feel particularly close to people who are trying to make that choice. Again, the point here being, if you have questions about financial aid, the process, or the choice that you're trying to make as families and parents, you can reach me in the business office, and Mr. Odie went through something very similar with his children as well. We're happy to talk through financial aid. As Ryan said, financial aid is open to every family who applies to St. Joe's. We utilize a system that's called FACTS, F-A-C-T-S, and there's a tab on the admissions drop down that has more information and links to the financial aid system. But the application is done online. It is kind of a qualitative and a quantitative approach. And we like the balance of information about your family's financial circumstances, but then there's also an opportunity to talk a little bit about the qualitative and maybe more general information that is impacting your family's circumstances now. All that's available online in the FACTS financial aid application. Again, the link being available on the dropdown in the admissions tab. And we consider your entire, circumstance when we're looking at financial aid. The applications are due on December 10th, and we will try to, roll financial aid decisions along with scholarship decisions, whether those are merit or some of our special scholarships, which we can also talk about here tonight, into your acceptance letter, which goes out on January 14th, is it this year, Brian?
That's
So
correct. Yeah.
All that information will be available to you when you receive the decision packet from St. Joe's on January 14th.
Which we're lucky, Mrs. Buckley, that we're back to that schedule. Last year, everything was sent out in piecemeal with
Right.
the acceptances, and then the scholarships of financial aid came later. This year, January 14th, you will know if your son was accepted to St. Joe's, and if you applied for financial aid, whether you were awarded aid, and if your son qualified for a scholarship. You'll get that whole package in one full swoop on January 14th. So
The application, I'll just give you just a little glimpse. It does require you to submit your tax return for 2020. This year we put a special question in the application that asks if there were unusual or significant changes to your family income in 2021. If you answer yes to that question, you will be required to submit some additional information about your 2021 income in the form of, at a minimum, pay stubs, current pay stubs, so that we can try to consider what might have been a change in your family's financial life as a result of the pandemic. So again, we're available in the business office to talk about, this process and answer any questions that you have. And certainly, feel free to talk or ask questions offline off of this, forum individually about your circumstances, if that's a little more comfortable. So you can reach us in the business office by dialing the main number, and we're extension 205, and we're always happy to help.
All right, thanks, Mary Kay. We have a question from Michelle. What is the general acceptance rate? Mike, I think you wanted to take this one.
Yeah, it's a good question. And part of the reason I want to take it is to hopefully calm some nerves and reassure people. So the general acceptance rate tends to be fairly high. Keep in mind, though, that we have different sort of acceptance tiers where we invite top performing students into what we call our Donnelly Scholars Program. We then give out what we call an honors acceptance, which guarantees you placement either into our high or low honors track. And then we have general acceptances. So again, if you're kind of going through the process, taking part in the admissions events, having your kids spend a day, submitting that application, submitting those grades, again, generally the acceptance rate tends to be fairly high. As you know, there are different, choices, whether you put St. Joe's as a first choice, a second choice, a third choice. Those students who we're a third choice school, you haven't really participated, you haven't been on campus, your chances then are probably not so high. But if you're putting us in your first or second choice, you're participating, you show interest in us, we will reciprocate that and show some interest in you. So again, really just sort of a reassurance that, again, we advise people, go ahead, go out, look at all the different schools, but just do your part. And I think you're doing that by taking part in evenings like tonight. You're showing certainly an interest in St. Joe's. So again, that really comes as a reassurance piece. Prior to being the principal of St. Joe's, I was a middle school principal. So I was on the other side of this process, working with 8th graders and their families and making that important choice over the next 4 years. And it is an important choice. So I, again, would encourage everyone, go out, do your homework, make sure you have all your questions answered before making that decision. But just as sort of a general, you can take a breath, the acceptance rate tends to be fairly high.
All right, our next question is from Kathy. What if the school does not send the information? Good question. This happens sometimes. You're putting it in the hands of guidance counselors and principals from other schools. Many of those schools are still quite a bit overwhelmed right now, trying to operate post-COVID. So as we get closer to the deadline and when we start reviewing the applications, if we see a student has completed the application, there's a letter of recommendation, we have their test scores, but their transcripts aren't there, we'll first contact the parents of the applicant to let them know, we don't have your transcripts for your son yet. Do you have them? And if not, can you contact your school? If you're then further having trouble with that, we will directly contact the school's guidance counselor and ask for them directly as well. We really do our part to make sure that we get those transcripts, because obviously we cannot move on with reading an applicant's application if we don't see their grades. So they are certainly necessary, and we will help get those throughout the process. So hopefully that helps. We had a question that was sent in earlier. How do students qualify for scholarships? So if your son applies to St. Joe's, they qualify to be considered for a merit scholarship just by applying for admission to St. Joe's. Now, students are all reviewed. We identify students from an academic standpoint who we think are worthy of merit-based awards. And as Mrs. Buckley said, that information comes out to you in mid-January with your acceptance package. So just by filling out the application and applying to St. Joe's, your son is eligible to be considered for a merit-based scholarship, which is our only scholarship. All of our scholarships are merit-based, are general scholarships. There are no athletic scholarships to St. Joe's. We do have 5 other scholarships that are done through an application process, which we're going to get to in a second because I see a question in there about that. But our general merit-based scholarships, every student is available who has applied. They're eligible to be considered for those scholarships. The question, how many students are typically accepted for 9th grade? I think it ranges year to year, depending on the amount of applications we do get. We had quite a lot of applications last year. We boosted our freshman class by over 50% last year. So as far as the amount of students typically accepted and formed, right now we have a freshman class of 131, which Mr. Bruno, I think, would echo. That's a good place for us right now. I think anywhere between 125 to 140, 145 is probably the range we want to be in for a school. To have 4 classes that size, that leaves us with a size and a learning environment that we promote at St. Joe's, which is an individualized approach. It keeps our class size small. But Mr. Bruno, would you say that's kind of the number there, that's our sweet spot for St. Joe's?
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. It keeps kind of the general population hovering at around 500, which is fortunately for St. Joe's been true for several decades now. When I graduated here in 2005, that was the population, and it's essentially still the population today. But it does help us to facilitate the culture that we're trying to build here. It allows us to really get to know your kids on a really personal level. So the numbers have been healthy, and they're kind of intentionally kept where they are. So again, yeah, I think you're right on that. Kind of that 125 to 145 is where we anticipate being. Yeah, it just helps St. Joe's to maintain exactly who we are.
Okay, we have some questions regarding those special scholarships that I referred to. One of them is asking particularly about the Performing Arts Scholarship, and do they need to submit the financial aid application first through fax? If yes, then how do we apply for the scholarship? So the way this is going to work this year, and it's all going to be done online, if you've indicated on your application when you submit that you plan on applying for financial aid, that will unlock in your checklist the ability to apply for special scholarships. Now, all 5 of those scholarships do have some need element based in, and that's why we add that caveat that families have to plan on applying for financial aid, because each one of those scholarships, including the Performing Arts Scholarship, does have a need element to it. So we want to assure that the appropriate applicants are applying for these scholarships. The Performing Arts one has some other criteria, as does the other 4 scholarships that you'll be able to apply for online. But like I mentioned, there is a need element, so you must have indicated that you plan on applying for financial aid, and then you can apply for those scholarships online. And Hillary, that's all through the school admin checklist. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is the next question, is the only freshman academic scholarship based on the HSPT, or are there additional that we can apply for? So you can apply, if you're applying for financial aid, you can apply for those other scholarships, where some of them also have a merit based element to them as well. The general merit based awards for St. Joe's, those are based on the full picture. They're not just the HSPT co-op scores. They are a factor, they're a big factor, but your son's grades, his extracurricular activities, his letter of recommendation will all be taken into account when awarding merit scholarships to our applicants. Okay. Our next question is from Debbie. Fax require the 2021 W-2s. Do we submit that once we receive that from our jobs at the end of December? Mary Kay, do you want to take that?
Fax should, for incoming freshman families, only be requiring your 2020 W-2s. It does, as I mentioned earlier, ask for 2021 pay stubs if in fact you indicate that there's been a significant change in your family income from 2020 to 2021. If it's asking for your 2021 W-2s, something's up, because we do not anticipate that you would have that information available by the time the fax application is due on December 10th. So if you would be kind enough, Debbie, to maybe just leave a note in the chat so that I could contact you by email tomorrow, and we'll work it out.
Okay, we have a question on scholarships. Are scholarships year to year, or are they guaranteed for 4 years? So our merit scholarships are good for all 4 years at St. Joe's, assuming your son stays in good academic standing. So they are good for the 4 years because they are merit-based scholarships. Your son does need to stay in good standing. And Mike, maybe you want to expand on what good standing actually entails for these students. But many of the students that receive these merit scholarships are honor students, or possibly are Donnelly Scholar students. So they must stay in good standing.
That's correct. So this year, actually, we've rolled out a self-assessment form for all students that they'll be completing throughout the year, where it's really reflective, where they have to think about kind of the 3 pillars of our mission, which is think, lead, serve. And so they answer 3 basic questions. You know, how have you contributed to the community as a critical thinker, as a leader, and then as a servant? Like, how have you participated in student life here at St. Joe's while maintaining exceptional performance in the classroom? And there are GPA requirements. So for our Donnelly scholars, we expect that their year-long GPA be a 90 and above, with no grade lower than an 85 in any of their classes for the year. For general scholarships, the total year-long GPA is 85, which can sound a little scary, but the way GPAs work with weighted GPAs, if your student is in accelerated or honors courses, they're getting more GPA weight for being a part of that program. So generally, I think as Mr. Zelta said, when students kind of get their scholarship in freshman year, barring some really extraordinary circumstances or students who just aren't fit in the mold for whatever reason, the vast majority tend to maintain their scholarship over the 4 years. But we do challenge them in that way with that self-assessment form to have them think about, yes, my performance in the classroom is critically important, but as is participating in the life of the school. That's really the mission of St. Joe's. Is I don't want kids who are just one thing. I don't want kids who come here and say, I'm just here for the theater, or I'm just here for athletics, or I'm just here for academics. We want well-rounded guys who are contributing to the mission of the school in a real way.
And I just want to differentiate our merit-based scholarships and our need-based financial aid. As Mike mentioned, those scholarships are good for 4 years, assuming your son is in good standing. Financial aid is done through the application process, and that's renewable every year. We give out financial aid to many, many families at St. Joe's, and each year they have to reapply for that financial aid. It's a way for families to explain any circumstances that may have changed financially in the household, and also to us to evaluate the families if that aid is still appropriate for a particular family. So that is done each year through an application, different than the scholarships, which are good for 4 years, assuming your son stays in good academic standing and is involved in many facets of the St. Joe's community. We have another question. When looking into financial aid and selecting if there is a change in income in 2021, is this a change for both positive and negative circumstances? Mary Kay, do you want to take that?
Yes, I mean, we would hope that people would answer the question in a complete and as honest a way as possible, so that we get the most current picture of your family's circumstances. And that's our goal. As Ryan said, we do have, just like you would in college, you reapply for financial aid every year, so that we can reassess your family's needs. So in some cases, the need changes, but we would hope that you would answer the question clearly and honestly for our sake and for the sake of all the families at St. Joe's, so that we could do the best job of awarding financial aid in a way that enables as many families as possible to participate in this great school.
I like to tell families who have asked, St. Joe's does not like to make it a practice of taking financial aid away from families that have been receiving it. But through that application process each year, if your family was lucky enough to win the lottery, we hope that you would not be applying for financial aid and looking for assistance in your tuition. So, but that is done each year, usually towards the springtime. Is that done, Mary Kay?
Yeah, we're going to move it up a little bit, to be honest. This year, we're going to try to get that information for renewing families in a little earlier. So the spring is probably a fair statement. I would only encourage you, though, to please really consider what you convey to us through the application in the narrative or the qualitative section, because it makes it a lot easier for us to know, how good a job we could do to try to help if we have a feel for what's going on in the household. And so to skip that section or not to add any color commentary for us will be a missed opportunity in terms of our trying to help make this a reality for you.
Okay, we have a question regarding transportation. Are there transportation options aside from transportation provided from nearby towns? So we have students from over 130 different towns at St. Joe's, which is a regional high school. So it is impossible for us to get all of them to St. Joe's. Depending on where you come from, your town may provide transportation. Rockland County provides transportation to their residents to come to St. Joe's. I do know that some of the towns neighboring us, like Mahwah, Ramsey, Allendale, parts of Wyckoff, parts of Oakland, parts of Upper Saddle River, there is a bus that comes from those towns to St. Joe's. We've also added a few bus routes that are St. Joe's provided bus routes that families can pay to have their son get transportation to St. Joe's and from St. Joe's. We have a bus route that originates in Ringwood. It stops in Oakland on 287 and then stops at the Ramsey Route 17 train station, which is on the Ramsey-Mahwah border. And that bus comes to St. Joe's each day. We also have a van route, which we established this year, that comes up the Garden State Parkway. That starts at exit 151 in Bloomfield at the rest stop. It stops in Elmwood Park, and then also stops at the Garden State Plaza, which allows a centralized drop-off point for families along the Route 4, Route 17, and Garden State Parkway corridor. I know that's not ideal for everyone, but it does help families cut a 20-minute commute maybe in half or even better, and get your son to school in time without you having to drive them all the way to St. Joe's. And certain towns do provide reimbursement for that transportation. There's a form on our website under transportation that families can fill out and submit to their town to see if they're eligible for financial reimbursement for that private transportation. Okay. We have another question. Michelle, what is the general timeline after acceptances for enrollment when it comes to acceptance, tuition payments, etc.? I think, Mike, you wanted to answer this. Our acceptances go out January 14th, and then there is a bit of a timeline that happens after that.
Yeah, correct. So exactly right. So the acceptance packets will be physically put in the mail the day before, on the 13th, with the expectation that you'll receive it the 14th. We will also send out an email acceptance at 3 o'clock on the 14th. So from the moment you receive that acceptance, you will notice in the acceptance packet that it will say that any financial awards, so whether that be scholarship or financial aid, are guaranteed until a certain date. And that date is typically the first Saturday in February, which I believe this year is the 5th, which we will hold kind of our official registration day. So registration is rolling. So if on the 14th you get that acceptance that you've been waiting for and you want to register right then and there, you'll have a link. You're able to go in and sort of continue to complete documents and be officially registered. Again, if you've received any type of award or aid package, you have until February 5th to make sure that that package is still intact. After that, tuition payments, and Mary Kay, I'll let you jump in here, but you will actually begin paying tuition for the 22-23 school year during the summer of 2022. So by the time September rolls around, you typically have 2 to 3 payments already in, and then you will continue your monthly payments through May of the following year. But Mary Kay, if you want to add any detail or clarify any of that.
No, that's right. The only thing I would add is that we have worked with families in different circumstances, some of whom want to do prepayment of tuition to sort of spread the monthly payment amount differently. Our minimum requirement is that the tuition payment begin in July, as Mr. Bruno said. But there's lots of different factors that impact family finances and cash flow. And certainly those are opportunities for us to try to work with you to make this as doable as possible.
And Mike, just to clarify, the diocese has listed February 8th as the first day that schools can require students to register. So that would, it's about a week later this year. So that would mark February 12th as the official registration day on campus at St. Joe's. So that looks like that's backed up about a week. Rose has a question. Is there a freshman placement test in March of 2022? And if so, what is the purpose of that test if merit scholarships are determined by virtue of the admission application? Mike, do you want to take this? This was obviously a topic that we spoke about recently, that in years past, there was a placement test given in March, but that may change this year, correct?
Yeah, correct. So that may change this year. So typically the purpose of the placement test was not to award any further merit scholarships, but really to determine what level of classes your son will participate in September. So that test was given to students who were registered enrolled members of the incoming class. And we would then use that as sort of another instrument to measure whether students are appropriately placed in the college prep, accelerated, or honors level. So we have toyed with the idea of potentially not doing it, or potentially just offering it in certain key areas such as math, because that's the one area in reviewing transcripts that there's probably the widest disparity between what we receive. So if we receive a transcript that says math 8, I don't know what Math 8 is. So I kind of always say to the schools, please either call it pre-algebra or algebra so that we have some understanding as to what's being covered in those classes. So we've talked about the potential of giving a math placement test, for example. The other area being world language. We have students who are maybe proficient in Spanish, and so they are looking to place out and maybe move up a level. But that's something that we've kicked around. In terms of that, determining any further merit scholarship, that's not really the purpose of it. Again, it's to determine the level of classes your son will be taking in his freshman year.
Okay, another question coming in. Our son applied for 9th grade with the application process. If he receives a merit scholarship in January, but decides to do the Knightsbridge program at St. Joe's instead, will he still get the merit scholarship when he enters the following year as a 9th grader? So that's kind of a unique question. As of now, the only guarantee for our Knightsbridge students is that if they complete the program, they have gained acceptance into the 9th grade at St. Joe's. So they do not have to go through the reapplication for admission to St. Joe's. Now, all of our Knightsbridge students do have the opportunity during their year at St. Joe's to take the Hspt co-op exam, which will be used for scholarships. So at this point, Mike, and maybe you can hop on this, we certainly don't guarantee that that scholarship will be the same, but a student will have a chance to test again for the opportunity to earn one of those scholarships.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're in the second year of the Bridge program now, and in its inaugural year, what qualified you to even be considered for the Bridge program was performance on the Hspt. So we looked at students who were in the lower performing range and invited them to be a part of the Bridge program. Given the complications of COVID and students who were remote and some of the more social and emotional issues that stemmed from that from students, the Bridge program this year looks very different in terms of academic ability. So we did have a couple of students who took the Hspt, qualified for a scholarship as a freshman, but chose to do the Bridge program for a variety of reasons for these students. They were not guaranteed that scholarship the following year, but we're told that, you know, if you continue to perform at a high level in the Bridge program, you will have the opportunity to test again and qualify. So typically, if a student qualifies in year one, having another full year of schooling and kind of another chance at the scholarship test, more likely than not, he's going to qualify for some level of scholarship the following year as well. So that has been kind of a unique thing that was born out of COVID, in which the dynamic of the Bridge program has really changed from year one to year two.
Yeah. We had a question asking, how does a student qualify for our Donnelly Scholars Program? So our Donnelly Scholars Program is our highest level of curriculum for incoming freshmen. These are the students who traditionally scored the highest on the Hspt co-op exam, have had exceptional grades throughout middle school, and it's shown that they are ready for a very challenging curriculum level when they enter St. Joe's. With a spot in the Donnelly Scholars Program, traditionally comes a very generous merit scholarship. But that is chosen by the administration at St. Joe's, who those invitations to that program are sent out to. So it's not an application process for that specific program. Those students are identified by the administration, and they are usually rewarded a very generous merit scholarship to come to St. Joe's. Question, is there a deadline to apply for St. Joseph's provided transportation option? What would be the fee? Is it included in tuition and payment, or is it paid separately? So transportation is usually sorted out in the late spring. Mr. Steve Roberts handles transportation. So applying for that, it's really a matter of if you want to be on one of our St. Joe's provided transportation routes, letting us know, and we'll go through the process with you. There are a limited amount of seats on certain routes, especially the van route. The bus route that I referenced that originates in Ringwood is a full-size bus. The van route is limited, so that is a first come, first served basis in the springtime. The fee currently is $1,200 for the year. And we work with families on that. If your son is only taking it to school and will not be taking it home, that's a conversation you're going to want to have with Mr. Roberts. and he is certainly willing to have that conversation and work with you on an appropriate payment plan or cost. Yeah, go ahead, Hillary.
Just to add on to that, thank you so much, Ryan. Just to add on to that, in the springtime, first of all, New York residents will call their own district to find out what they do as far as transportation. New York, their districts are great. New Jersey has a form, B6T form, that will show up in your checklist, and you will get notification that it's there for all New Jersey residents, which we will send to your individual district, because sometimes there are payments that are made to you from your district and sometimes not. Changes year to year, changes minute to minute. But in the spring, again, you will get that B6T transportation form that you'll be able to fill out, and then we'll submit it to your district, and then it's between your district and you. I hope that adds some clarification to some of this.
Let's hope so. Couple more questions. Looks like we have a few more minutes left. In regards to these merit-based scholarships, is there a limited amount given? Mike, you want to go with that?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize, so that there are varying amounts given. You can look at the kids like in the Donnelly Scholars programs, and they're in your top 5% of test takers. So as Ryan said, they're going to walk away with a very generous scholarship offer. But we also give merit scholarship to students who are not necessarily in that top 5%, kind of your off the charts kids, but students who are just good, strong students who have performed well in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and do fairly well in the test. But they're not, all headed to Harvard and Yale beyond here. And they also qualify for some level of scholarship. So I think that part is important to realize, that, some of the merit scholarships will be in the form of $1,000, $2,000, $2,500. Some students on the higher end are, in the $10,000 a year range, and sort of all denominations in between. Again, it is kind of a good range of scholarships there. We tend to focus, I think, a lot on the high end kids, but the average to above average student is really important at St. Joe's here too. So
yeah, absolutely. Another question: what percentage of students applying receive either scholarship, grant, or financial aid? Mary Kay, I know you're not going to know that exact number in your head, but is there a rough estimate? Talking about the freshman class, let's say, from this past year.
My instinct off the top of my head is that somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 80%, maybe a little higher, maybe 85% of students receive some form of assistance, whether that is in the form of financial aid or scholarship. That would kind of be my gut.
Okay.
Yeah. Our goal is to try to make this doable for you. So we're working together on that.
Yeah, I think that's important. And again, at varying levels, there are some people
Right.
there who are getting a tremendous amount of assistance and scholarship, and some people who are, getting just enough assistance that it enables them to send their son here.
Yep.
Couple more questions. What other fees are there in addition to tuition? So we do have a couple fees that Mrs. Buckley can talk about. We have our technology fee. We have our Chromebook fee, and they're a little different when it comes to freshman and sophomore through senior year, right, Mary Kay?
That's right. So this year, the year that we are currently in, our fee structure is such that as an incoming freshman, you would purchase your Chromebook, your son's technology tool, which will be his to own for the 4 years, and it is with the $500 fee also covered by insurance for the 4 years that he is here. So a $500 Chromebook purchase, which is the one-time fee, and a $200 technology fee, which is an annual number. So every year, each student is assessed a $200 fee as a technology upgrades. It's also enables us to support the online textbooks and other classroom supplies. So the $700 fee that is for incoming freshmen is something that you would pay with your initial deposit, and the latest date for that would be The latest date that would be July 1st.
Okay. Debbie wants to know about how many students receive a Donnelly scholarship. So the program currently, Mike, if I'm correct, has 12 students in the Donnelly program right now. As far as freshmen, our sophomores, what's that number right now, Mike? Is it 10?
It's about a dozen. It's 10, and that's kind of our sweet spot in terms of the Donnelly Scholars. So in terms of how many students are extended that acceptance, it's probably double that. It's probably in the range of about 24, 25 students who we will invite into the program, with the expectation, again, that we'll enroll between 10 and 12 of those students, which enables us from a scheduling standpoint to make the program robust enough for those students. So they have some classes where they sort of travel as a cohort. So in their freshman year, for example, they'll take AP World History, and they'll be the only students taking that course that year. So in order to make that course at a number that's worth running, it's about 10 to 12. They'll take a couple of other classes as well, sort of in that cohort model, at the high honors level. So they'll do in their freshman year theology at the high honors level. In sophomore year, they'll take pre-AP US. They'll take a high honors English course, and then we'll start to just insert some high achieving students who are not members of the Donnelly Scholars Program into some of those classes. And then once students enter junior and senior year, they'll branch out in different electives, with the goal being that they will take every course at either the honors or the AP level. So they're not entirely insulated as kind of their core group throughout the 4 years. We definitely want them to build some camaraderie as a group, but then again, sort of get exposed to the rest of the student body as well, with the idea being that they'll be a positive influence on the kids around them. But yeah, again, kind of in that 10 to 12 range is a sweet spot for the program.
All right, and it looks like we have one last question before we get ready to wrap up. Liz wants to know, are there opportunities to get college credits during the next 4 years? Yes, there are. Students do have an opportunity to earn college credits through Seton Hall University. Mike, maybe you can explain a little bit how that works. That usually comes for upperclassmen who have advanced through many of their core classes already. They have that opportunity later on down the road, right? That's
correct. So we partner with Seton Hall through what they call Project Acceleration, where we have teachers who they submit their curriculum for a given course. It's then approved by Seton Hall University, and upon successful completion of that course, students have the opportunity to earn credit that is certainly accepted by Seton Hall, but is also has the potential of being accepted by another college or university that they apply to. So that, in conjunction with AP level courses, allows students to build a credit, kind of a credit base that they can walk away to college with. And it pays off then at the next level, where they have some credits behind them that they're not paying full college tuition for. So that's paid off really nicely for a lot of our guys. All right, and it looks like that's taken us right up until 8 o'clock, which is exactly where we usually wrap up our Sofa Social session. Just to remind everyone, the key dates coming up: December 10th. That is the application deadline for admission. That's also the deadline to submit your financial aid application, as well as if you qualified to apply for the additional scholarships. December 10th is the date for that as well. As always, all of us are here to help. If you have any questions about anything in this process, please reach out to us. St. Joe's prides itself on our communication with families. Hopefully, many of you have already felt that. No question is too small to drop us an email, give us a call to the admissions office, to the main office, or to the business office, and we are all happy to help you throughout this process. So hopefully we'll be seeing many of you on campus again soon, and hopefully seeing some applications from your sons coming in over the next few weeks. Have a great night. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to all our panelists.
Thank you. Good night.